Welcome, gentlemen, Vinod and Pranay. I'm so delighted to have you here for the Stanford CEO series. You both are visionaries in technology. You've had a big impact on how people are thinking about and embracing technology, both in terms of serving customers, B2B, even B2B2C, and thinking about then how is it the organizations have embraced these technologies. And I wanted to start off with a theme that's carrying through all the work that we've been doing with this CEO series, which is perhaps you could frame a bit how it is that we think about coming out of a crisis and the engagement levels and how to bring a leadership team around rallying for the customer. I was there at the beginning of the latest crisis, and everyone was coming and leaping to business continuity. We've come a long way since there. How would you share with us what you've learned during the last year and what we could do about helping accelerate the growth?
Okay, maybe I can go
Yes.
first, Mark. Firstly, great to be here, and thank you for having us. It's great to be here with Pranay and you to have this discussion at a time which is really interesting because we are reopening many of the assumptions on business in terms of leadership, teams, how people work, how to engage with our customers. So very happy to be here. I see the crisis as we're all talking about the impact on the economy, how in the last year we've had to work in a completely different way. I'm not just talking about working virtually and working from home, but also just our business models. Each of us as businesses have had some assumption or the other thrown to the winds. Some of those situations have resulted in major crises, if you're in the hospitality industry or travel industry, or in parts of technology, like in Pranay's case and mine, it's also been filled with lots of opportunity. But regardless of whether it's crisis or opportunity, we've had to revisit our business models. I'm sure we're going to talk about that. What I also feel has changed, and I want to dwell on this a little bit more, is the role of leadership and how people work as leaders, how people follow the leaders, and how they work as teams. And I think the importance of being authentic has really been highlighted more than ever. We've always spoken about bring your most authentic self to work, whether you're a team member or a follower or a leader, and those roles always keep revolving. But I feel in the last 12 months, even when I look at myself, I've now found a pattern of working, which hopefully I'm being optimal in my output and excelling occasionally once every maybe 25 months. But what I'm finding is that I'm finding a balance between what really makes my mojo work, right? And it can ever be as something as trivial as, how do you want to dress for work to be, yourself and be most optimal, to actually how you engage at work, how do you balance your personal time with your family time, how you want to connect with people and so on. So I think the emphasis on authenticity is highlighted ever more than anything else during this crisis. I recently read a study that 50% of employees in the UK will make a decision on whether they want to remain with their employer or not going forward based on the new HR policies the employer will have. Right? It's not job content, it's not location, it's about how you're going to allow hybrid working. What are the real policies? Are you going to be able to work around, my environment? And for me, that boils down to, will you allow me to be myself? Will you allow me to be the myself that I've discovered in the last 12 months when we go back to work, and then I'll make a decision. And I feel the opportunity here for leadership is to actually say, let us find even more ways in which we can let people be truly authentic, be themselves in the workplace, and we will be even more explosive in the output that we provide, right? And I don't have the answers for this, but this is a question that's going through my mind on how we should evolve as leaders to permit true authenticity.
And you've had some turnover and also people that you've added during this time where we've been doing it remotely. Has the way you've been recruiting, and you're making a comment there about retaining people, the type of people you're looking for or the availability of talent, how's that changed in this environment?
We've been quite lucky that our attrition rates historically been low, and they've been even lower during COVID. We have been very mindful of the role that we play in society and in people's lives, given this, scale at which we operate in Europe, and even have held off on some of the restructuring activities because we don't think it's the right time to, let people for non-performance issues into the workforce. That's one point I want to mention, and I think businesses need to act with that sense of responsibility. Finding talent, interestingly, has not been a challenge, right? We are going through a major transformation on who we are as a company. And I feel that since we've been very purpose-led throughout this period and doing a lot for society, and when we communicate that ethos to prospective employees, they go verified, right? Today, you can't make these claims which are, even slightly hollow. So they verify it, and when they find that Vodafone is a purpose-led organization, I think we've actually tipped some people over that we may not have been able to get pre-COVID to join us, given they've, people are, again, going back to what I said earlier, looking at themselves and want to be associated with organizations where they can fulfill both personal and professional purpose. Going forward, I feel what is going to be really important is this: what are your ways of working? How do you organize yourself? Can I be myself in your organization? And if we can accommodate that, we will get the right people. If we can't accommodate that, they'll go somewhere else where they can find the environment they're seeking.
Could you talk a little bit more about how you define purpose? Because I know that in a 12-month period, you'd really transform the way, in a sense, you go to market with your employees, talking about your purpose and your vision. And then maybe, Pranay, you could talk about the same as it's evolved and as you've grown the organization over at Fractal.
A purpose, Mark, from, we're very focused on three things. One is on creating a digital society where there are no chasms between digital haves and digital have-nots. We're very, and be in a position to influence that and help that. The second is about inclusiveness, and I think post George Floyd, that issue has broadened more to also include or put race more at the front and center of it. In the past, it was very gender focused, which is the right platform, but now we're also putting race and ethnicity at the into the mix in a very prominent way, and then also expanding it to sexual orientation, physical ability, and so on. So I think the purpose agenda has actually expanded further in the context of COVID, but also in the context of the events, unfortunate events in the last 12 months. And finally, our other purpose has been around the planet, which again, right, I think in a positive way, people have realized when we're not sort of populating our urban and rural areas the way we did and being hyperactive and over consuming, pausing and not doing that actually benefits the planet. It's raised the awareness amongst all of us. So those three are purpose at one level. And we find these quite powerful and all-encompassing platforms. We've also been aided, I think, by some key programs in Europe, like not post-COVID, we're still living through it, but the European governments have launched the EU Recovery Funds, which is a massive infusion of 750 billion euros that will be pumped into the European economy from the governments and the European Commission to revitalize Europe. And a lot of that is focused on digital reskilling and on and digital enablement of key sectors like education, healthcare, and so on, as well as 30% of that 750 million will go, 750 billion, sorry, not million, will go into the planet-related, programs. And these funds will be dispersed over the next 3 years. So it's not like a 10-year program. And these things in combination are creating many more conversations, both internally as well as with the ecosystem of partners who are crucial to driving, a big platform level change. So we're really more, inspired by what's happening both, internally, but also in an environment now where I think the right topics are coming to the forefront.
Makes sense. Pranay, you've had front row seat with many clients as well as your own organization, as Vinod has, in the sense of what purpose means. Could you talk about how that might have evolved as accelerating through this crisis?
No, absolutely. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I first want to comment on the point that Vinod made about bringing your authentic self to work and having the freedom to be authentic at work. I think what has happened in the last 1 year, because we've all been working from home, it's almost at some level like, people sometimes say that I want to sort of, reevaluate my relationship, right? Taking a sort of a almost like a quasi break from the relationship or whatever, and reassess whether this is, making sense to me or not, right? And it's interesting for the technology, digital analytics, AI business, um, the talent market is booming. Okay, people have more options than they did a year back. I mean, there was no, economic crisis that hit this market. In fact, it was the other way around, right? So people on the team have several options. At the same time, we're finding that we're able to get talent as well. So we're losing talent, but we're also, able to find talent, right? So I think in a sense, people are kind of reassessing where they want to be and why they want to be. And what about this organization I value? What about this organization I don't value? How does it fit into my life and my purpose? And I think that's a pretty interesting dynamic. I think at the same time, there is another dynamic at play as well, which is that I think we used to all get some soft but clear, tangible value by being at office, being around our colleagues, and that has gone right over the last 12 months. And so some other things are coming more into focus and more into play, right? And we'll see how this all pans out over the next several months as we all come back into office. But I think the point that Vinod is making is spot on, which is that we're quite clear that we will have a sort of a different set of policies, or not even policies, I think just norms around what is okay and what's not okay. And we think that this idea of having tremendous flexibility on where I can create value from. Do I need to be in the office 5 days a week to create value? Can I save several hours of commute every week? Can I dress in a fashion that I feel comfortable with? All of those aspects, I think those will certainly become very, very strong. And the pandemic has shown us that we can be effective. We can be very effective even if you're not there in person. So I think that is just one aspect that we have seen. I think one of the things that people will certainly are judging companies on and valuing leadership on is that how people behaved in this moment of crisis, right? Because there was an opportunity to panic and to sort of not treat people carefully. And I think organizations that chose to sort of value people over short-term fluctuations in profit and revenue, I think people will remember that. And one of the things that we at Fractal also did was that we not only told people that we are not going to let go anyone unless the situation is dire. Okay, and thankfully that dire situation never came to play at all. In fact, we grew, right, as opposed to anything else that could have happened. But also, like you said, we also did not do any performance-related restructurings or separations for a fairly long period of time, because that would have been totally the wrong period of time to for people to be looking for jobs. Now, I think going forward from here, from a purpose standpoint for us, I think there are a few things here. One is that there is a clear purpose here to power every decision in the enterprise using AI, engineering, and design, and enable the world to make better decisions and deliver better outcomes to customers, to employees, to shareholders, and really make a big dent in the way the world works and create, I think, overall a better place for everyone. And I think AI, digital, all of these technologies have the power to do that. And I think people value that so some kind of a purpose to sort of wrap their minds around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is one other aspect to it, which is that how well are you applying your capabilities and skills to things that go beyond your revenue, your profits, and all of those kinds of things. And people see that in your action, right? As an example, we put together a COVID workforce right at the beginning of the pandemic, where we were helping multiple governments. And people stepped in to work for that beyond their normal work hours, right? I mean, people did literally a second shift, right, to, to support that work. And that shows that people are very eager to contribute to something bigger than themselves and to the society at large. And I think the third part, Vinod, which you mentioned about sustainability, now we are a much smaller company with a much smaller carbon footprint, but we're very clear that we're heading towards setting a zero carbon goal, and we'll figure out what the date is, but sort of very close, right? We want to get to that very, very quickly, and I think again people value that, right? So how you treat people, what is the core purpose of the company, and then are you contributing beyond sort of what is just immediately relevant to the company? Are you using your capabilities to impact society in a positive way? I think all of these are important to people.
These all factor into the authenticity that Vinod was talking about, I think, at the Open, where you're able to attract and retain and energize and hopefully inspire people because they can bring their best person to work, their best form of themselves. I think about both of you as being leaders who've been worldly, who have been around the world, who've come in a sense and parachuted into many cultures from your own culture. I'd love to have both of you, Vinod, start with a conversation a bit about the fact that you're a man who's been transported around the planet in many roles. Could you share a little bit about the journey that you've had and maybe some of the learning of how you really do think about being authentic and also being inclusive, because you've had to reach across so many time zones, as I think about the work that you've done in India and in Singapore, and those were global organizations, and now you're in the UK also reaching out.
Yeah, I think it's the privilege of being old. You could have move around from country to country. I'm not that old, but I think it just comes through experience and keeping at least one eye and 1 ear open that you learn, right? It's just a process. But all kidding aside, what I find, Mark, is that people are so similar regardless of where you go in the world. People are not different. People are way more alike than they're different. And I think the differences are a really thin layer. And I'm not saying this in any sort of, philosophical way, but what drives us, what motivates us, what causes fear, what causes anxiety, what causes envy, they're just similar wherever you go. And I think as leaders, it's very important for us to recognize that. And therefore, I go back to my authentic thing. Therefore, if you don't have to be anything other than yourself to connect with people. So one is, I think, that people are quite similar. That's what I've discovered. The second aspect, as I I've worked with organizations, and I always go to places where there is an opportunity for big transformation, is that there's, again, we've spoken about a lot. We over-index on the time we spend on the mind part of it, right? But we don't spend enough time working on the hard part of change, right? And linking an organization strategy to its purpose is great, but it's equally important to link strategy to people's individual purpose. That's hard. And it's not hard because it's difficult to do. It's actually just put time. You really have to invest the time to communicate the same strategy in over and over again, but in the context of different people. And this is something that some leaders have and some leaders don't, right? But it is putting yourself in the shoes of your audience, the relevant audience that you're speaking with, and taking your strategy or vision, your mission, the goals for the year, whatever, and making it contextualized for them. And I feel if leaders do that, people show up at work wanting to do a good job, right? There's very, 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 very few bad apples in the world, I believe, right? And if you do that, they will deliver. They know what to do, right? But you need to show that the work that they do is meaningful. And this is the other thing that I've learned, regardless of where I go, this applies. The, the third one is on getting leaders, especially those who are in middle management, right, or in their first leadership positions, to recognize that the best way to go up an organizational structure, right, even with evolving structures, whether it be a classic pyramid or if it's a matrix or an agile team or whatever, is actually to be, I use three words, right? One of the best ways to actually be pushed up from below. Second best way is to be pressed up by your peers. The worst way is to be pulled up from above, right? And it all sounds like great words, but for a young person, they actually focus on the opposite way, right? They're trying to like please the boss and, you know, be cool with their peers and then their teams. But the minute you see a leader, and there's an aha moment when people get it and then start investing in coaching their times, building a leadership pipeline, you know, and really making their teams shine when they have conversations, they get, you know, they get pushed up, right? And this is the other thing which I find, you know, you have the challenges, but also the leaders who shine regardless of where you go, regardless of industry, regardless of the stage of the market that you're operating in. And the last thing that I'd like to mention on a lighter note, but actually probably my most profound insight is the thing that determines great leaders is sleep. So if you rest well, you have the energy to give to people around you.
Mm.
And people really underestimate the value of giving that energy and always having that game face on. Because what do Pranay and I, do all day long, which is just energize people, listen to ideas, build on ideas, right? Ask people to go back, think about something else, or, just give them the freedom to, go break the walls down. Each of those, there's a transfer of energy, and you can't transfer the energy unless you're rested yourself.
Yeah.
I wish I was practicing this all the time, but I think I'm okay at it. But I see many leaders wherever they go trying to, forget this aspect of to make the gear changes that we make throughout the day. You need to have energy and you need to be present all the time. So sleep, and you'll be a
Yeah.
good leader.
I think that last point is phenomenal. Last point is phenomenal. I think I need to practice that more, but very insightful.
When I think about the way that you do that, Vinod, too, you've had a way of helping teach me as I work with other leaders to think about the fact that the next meeting that you'll be Zooming or that you'll be leading in person might be the most important meeting of the day for the people in the room. More likely, maybe even more than it is for you. And since you've gone from a wedding to a funeral to a wedding, so you can't bring the last meeting into the next meeting and to get that.
And
scale.
it's the one other thing which I'm really quite hopeless at doing is punctuating my day with a few breaks, so you can you can go with the right energy into the meetings. And these days with the Zoom and Team sessions, you're just going back to back, right? Often without health breaks or time for a proper meal. That's bad in itself, but ideally, we need to have times to just say, okay, what energy do I need to convey? And sometimes it is even stern energy, right? You want to, but you've got to put yourself in that mode. But for all of that, you need a reservoir of both physical and mental energy that sleep gives you.
Yeah. And
I sound like a sleep doctor, but
yeah, I'll just take a minute to reiterate some of the things that you said, right? Which is that I do agree that yes, I think fundamentally at the core, I think people are similar and the needs are similar. The manifestations of that may be different from culture to culture, right? And how they feel that that whether you value the person or you're giving them the required freedom. I think that manifestation of it differs from culture to culture, and leaders need to know how that should play out in different cultures. Especially now that we're in a global village. That said, I think fundamentally the points are the same. I think it really starts with belonging, right? Do I feel that I belong in this place? I'm accepted in this place for what I am, and therefore I don't have to worry about that most fundamental thing, right? then I think everyone wants to contribute in a meaningful way to something meaningful. So I mean, having that idea that this is I'm doing something meaningful for a meaningful purpose, and I'm able to contribute in a beyond myself, right? And then I think people need to be recognized for the value that they bring, right? And should experience a sense of fairness in how they're being recognized. And yeah, I think the whole notion of inclusion, right? So I think these are some of the fundamentals. I think people are sort of the same. I think, and then you add to that everyone wants to constantly learn and get better at their craft, right? Whatever that may be, and they want to experience freedom in doing that. Increasingly, I think people want more freedom, and I think they want it earlier in their careers than they might have done 10 or 15 or 20 years back. And I think that basic stuff sort of stays the same, is similar across the world.
When you think about the bringing your whole self to work, and also this notion of being present for the people that you're leading, it's been amazing. As we were always on video before the crisis, now we'll always be on video going forward. Part of that's democratizing, because it means the people that were outside the room when we were having the conference call or the conference were the disembodied voices. Now they're always in the room with us. And if you could talk a little bit, Vinod and then Pranay, about the notion that you've also brought in symbols and memes to try to encourage people along the way. So I get to parachute into basements and bedrooms as you do, and kitchenettes and wherever we are around the world visiting with people right now. And I can see on your shelf, you've got Kermit there. And you've used metaphors in the past and various symbols and thoughts to try to encourage people to remember what the urgency around the mission is. Could you talk about
so I'll
entertain
you. I know it's so I have young kids, but these were not toys that come from their stuffed animal collection. These are things. This one I actually paid for, and this one my business manager gave me as a present, which and it's so I sometimes sit on meetings like this, Mark. But the reason for that, I have this here. Kermit here is to say a reminder for people to leapfrog, right? It's, there is an opportunity to make a generational shift in everything that you do. Don't settle for just, a short step. Let's leap, right? So this is a constant reminder. I'm the butt of many, many, many jokes, but I think my message prevails. And it gives me license and gives the team license to say, okay, what if we have to leapfrog, what do we have to do? Right. And it's
what that look like?
Fun into the equation, but it's also about just creating a new language. And then this little friend here is another one that we literally put this in the middle of the conference room tables when we meet to say, what's the elephant in the room? And it's interesting sometimes, when people are, talking grown men and women, right? But when they want to discuss something that they know is a real elephant in the room, they literally grab this and kind of hold on to it while they're talking. And in a team, you need, your own symbolism that you need, or rituals and so on, to deal with the dysfunctions that every team has, right? To deal with the limitations that each of us have in the way we look at, especially a change process or any other transformation. So yeah, I liberally use these. You just have to be ready for the jokes that go with it, but it's worth it.
Well, what I love too about it, Pranay, for you to take note of what Vinod's doing here, because it does give this foil that people they literally hold on. I've been in meetings and they actually hold on to this thing. And then it actually also holds Vinod accountable as the boss. So if he starts, if his narrative to them, at least in their perception, this would never be actually true about you, Vinod, but if you needed some coaching to stay on topic about what is our value here, they could go grab Kermit and say, is this really an example of how we're breaking the mold and leapfrogging? How do I rationalize that directive with the last three sequential sort of maybe asks or KPIs that I have? And so it feels like it democratizes, because like he put it in the room, here's the elephant. I have permission to talk about this, even though we're tired, it's towards the end of the meeting, and I might feel otherwise that maybe it was not politically correct. Pranay, when you think about the versioning of the messaging that's going on right now, it's been a big step for people to start to embrace at all company levels, this notion of being able to put the higher intelligence that can come from the science that you're undertaking right now. How have you found, and I'd love, Vinod, for you to comment on this too, how are people starting to think about those greater technologies? We're talking about leapfrogging here. What are some of the benefits that you think are going to be essential for the people that you serve at Vodafone Business and you at Fractal that will really help society and help businesses?
Go ahead, Pranay.
Right. Yeah. So, I think first of all, the last 12 months have actually really helped companies, have really helped spotlight this entire technological advancement or the technologies that are available to us, the importance and benefit of digital, of AI, of cloud. And yeah, so I think it's really sort of, pushed the whole digital journey forward in several years. I think what might have taken 5, 6, 7 years may have happened in the last, 12 months. I think that's something that we're seeing across several industries and several client segments. So I think that's one part to it. I think in terms of benefits, I think clients are starting to see that in a very, very big way, right? I mean, there's this whole notion of remote. It's just not possible without getting, digitally educated, digitally, comfortable, and all of that stuff. But now you're in a world where, I'll just take a very simple example here, right? Contact centers across a range of industries got completely overrun with the number of calls, so much so that companies had to just they simply could not attend to calls because people were not available to be there in the contact centers, or because people could not actually go to physical stores. The call volume went up, right? And this is a perfect moment for people to understand that actually stuff like robo chatting, as an example, right, or chat bots, or proactive digital messaging. These are all things that can really help in a big way to address these kinds of things. And these are all journeys that companies were on. It would have been at a much slower pace. It's really jumped up in a significant way, and it kind of paves way in a very interesting way even for employees to be doing things that of a higher order of work and higher order of value creation. I think that's created that opportunity as well. We're seeing some pretty big jumps. If I look outside of the things that and look at something like healthcare, right, which is sort of beyond just the purpose of I'm saying revenue or profit and stuff like that. I think we're seeing some huge opportunities, huge jumps over there. And I just take the example of something like Cure, which we spun off from Fractal recently, to do diagnosis on X-rays using deep learning, right? There's a tremendous shortage of radiologists worldwide. And if you think of the kinds of problems that people are facing, where they're able to throw money to get equipment, but no amount of money can increase the number of radiologists overnight. I think a technology like this just enables us to provide healthcare to so many people worldwide, right? And that's just one example of the kind of positive impact that we can have. So I think of it both in terms of our ability to serve consumers better in a range of their daily stuff, whether that's a product or a service and so on. I think of it in terms of how employees can do higher order things, but also really how we can help people meet something more very basic to their lives, like improving the quality of their health and stuff like that. And I think all of these have jumped forward several years in a short span of 12 months. Yeah.
No, I agree with Pranay on this, and I'm not sure if I've sort of missed it in the news, but the rhetoric around some of these cutting edge technologies, well, AI and ML, have now become more mainstream and just getting more sophisticated. The rhetoric around them replacing jobs seems to have subsided a bit, because I think people are seeing the real power of it. And Mark, from the work that I've done earlier with Ken Goldberg from Berkeley, for example, it's always been about multiplicity, right? It is that machine and man will coexist, and we will help each other get more efficient, and there'll be, yes, there'll be displacement of certain kinds of jobs, but new jobs will be created. And, that Sagittarian optimism runs through my thinking on this as well. But, so that's, and I hope, this period has shown that many of these technologies are very powerful and have actually enabled life to go on, societies to be held together, for the sick to be healed, and for children to be educated. That's been possible because of connectivity, like what we do. It's about AI and ML, and also tools, newer technologies. They're getting ready for mass adoption, like AR, VR, and mixed reality. These are fast tracking. When we, at the beginning of COVID, we thought that some of our more complex technology offerings will see slower demand because customers will slow down on capital spending. Right? What we're seeing is actually quite the opposite, where large companies are saying, okay, what if another pandemic strikes, or what if there's a natural disaster and I need to keep, my supply chain going, and I need to keep my factory going. So I need mobile private networks. I need warehouses which are fully automated. And that I can, run assembly lines or supply chains or deliveries without humans. Not because I don't want humans, but what if a situation I can't send people out? So that for a few months caught us a little bit off guard. So even what we slowed down, we then fast tracked because customers were saying we want that. But one thing which has come up is in this whole exercise is the digital divide or technology divide between large companies and small companies, right? If you take Europe, for example, almost 85% of the jobs in the private sector come from small and medium enterprises, right? A large part of the GDP that is outside government supported GDPs, again, small and medium enterprises. And at least from a European context, these companies are not really equipped to be digitally savvy. And we have done quite a few studies that show the companies that the SME companies were digitally equipped way outperformed those who are not digitally equipped. And they also grew through in this crisis, whereas others declined and are many fighting bankruptcy. So we really are trying to do a lot in this space of taking technology and making it more adoptable and adapted to small and medium-sized enterprises. And we see a huge opportunity here because they are thirsty, they are willing. In Europe, the recovery funds are going to be focused on the digitization of SMEs, but you need to take, and today with cloud and SaaS and so on, it is possible to take the technology that the large multinationals are using and make them available in sachet-sized offerings to the small and medium-sized business. And that is something that all of us as players in the tech space should be looking at doing, both as an opportunity, but also I think as a societal need.
It's a huge opportunity. And I see you both taking steps to really transform the way customers think about this and open their hearts and minds to it. And as you said, it's become a part of the lexicon now. It's comforting to know that we have the digital assistants as opposed to the digital replacements, that we have the digital amplification of skills and expertise that make doctors better at what they do and make technologists better at every level. That has transformed. As we come to a close, I'd like to take a fun shift to this idea that was really introduced at the beginning here by both of you around authenticity and leadership, and then even balance. I love your advice today to get some sleep. I think we could all use quite a bit more than we got this weekend. And part of that ends up being finding ways that we can diversify our portfolio of activities that allow us to get the breaks that are necessary. We started our conversation today talking a little bit about your late game advantage that you're taking to becoming a polo player, and Pranay's also a singer. And at least to the extent that we could talk about that, how would you relate to that place in your life that fills, and any sort of lessons for other leaders, that maybe the 20-year-old version of yourself who might have integrated that into their lives so that you could come fresh to the game, literally and metaphorically?
I think the singer must go first. That's a much more difficult skill to acquire.
I don't know. Compared to the polo, I don't know that. No, look, I think fundamental to this is, recognizing that, we are all human beings, and we have many facets to our lives, right? And what we do as leaders or what we do in our profession is an important, but only one dimension of our life, correct? And we have to create space for all the dimensions of our life that we value and that we get energy and happiness from. And I think that should be no different whether, I mean, whatever you're doing, whether you're the CEO of the company, or you're a politician, or whether you're a programmer, whatever that may be. I think we all have to give space for all the things that we value. For me, I find that a couple of things that are, apart from, of course, spending time with family and the kids and my friends, I find tremendous sort of re-energizing, powers in one, meditation, which I try to get about 4 to 5 times at least in a week, and not very long sessions, even 15 minutes. I think it does a lot. And I think music, whether that is spending time listening, or whether that's time when I'm practicing the guitar, or singing, it is just at that time, your mind is entirely in the flow around that topic, right? So you're yeah, it's in a different world, and that really helps. I think getting to a different place, periodically, helps you show up with more energy to the next place that you come to. I think it's just the way our minds are. We need something different to happen, and each time we allow that experience some space, I think we get energy for the next place that we go to.
You said it all there, Pranay. Way I like to sort of characterize it, we all need to find zones where we get an opportunity to detox our minds, and that, depending on your personality, your interest, and so on. I don't think it's a stage of life or age thing. I think it just depends
Yeah.
on who each of us are a person. For me, the sport of polo puts me in situations where I need to be fully present, because otherwise I'll find myself on my bum staring up at the horse, and probably a few other players laughing at me. So, being on the edge like that, just, you can't think about anything else. You're completely present for 45 minutes to an hour. And the release of energy and the clarity of your mind that you get after that is really incredible. So I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so that helps. It comes from riding, it comes from skiing, and so on. But also, I find with time that the other thing is the serenity that you get by being with the horses and the animal, right? And they're very reactive to human energy, both positively and negatively. So there's both of it, right? In the beginning, it was much more about being on the edge, being super alert, and getting the release, from all, from the sort of high energy state that you're in for a period of time, but very focused and present. But equally, as I've matured very slowly, I begin to enjoy the calmness that you get from actually doing nothing but being around horses. But like you said, it's whatever floats your boat. But you need to have some area that you can go to, that this without much conscious effort, the situation or what you do puts you in the flow.
I can't think of two guys that are better at being able to be in that flow, both in the way you lead people, your authenticity, and the way that you make time for family and community, and for the agenda that you have going forward. So it's such a great honor to know you and to be a part of your ecosystem. I think that everybody listening who's growing as CEOs and those who are leaders earlier in their careers can just benefit so much from your lessons. So thank you both today for being with us at the Stanford CEO Summit. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks,
Thank you,
Pranay.
Mark. Yeah, thanks, Vinod.